Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, January 18th, 2022 special work session for the City of Bel Air Beach. Before we do the Pledge of Allegiance, we got news today that our city attorney is going to be resigning due to a health situation. And I think he's told us what the situation is. He's got cancer. So if you're a praying person, say a prayer for him. If you're not, just keep him in your thoughts. Okay? He was a good man. He really helped us out tremendously. And he's going to need our support. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a bit. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Robin Aki. Here. Councilmember Frank Bankert.
Present.
Councilmember Glenn Gunn.
Here.
Councilmember Leslie Notero.
Here.
Councilmember Rita Swope.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dave Gaddis.
Here.
Mayor Joseph Manzo.
Here.
And City Manager Lynn Reeves.
Here.
Just note that for the record, Vice Mayor is joining us on the telephone. We have an agenda 1 through 8. I'm going to withdraw, since we have no city attorney here, withdraw items 5 and 7. It will be productive at this point to have discussions on that. I am going to add a discussion. Maybe we can do it before number 1 about Fred's request to us. Anybody have any objection? He made a request that he be relieved out of his contract, so I'd like to put that before number 1. Any objections? No? Then we'll do that. I'll call that item A. So the request that he made to the city manager forwarded to us. I believe he has a 60-day, if I'm not mistaken, Lynn, 60-day 30-day. Okay, 30-day notice. Given the circumstances, he's going to be undergoing treatment probably as early as this week, from what I understand. So he's asked if we would let him out of the contract early. I've had a discussion with the city manager. It doesn't cause any real problems for him. I don't know that it causes any of us any individual problems, but I'd like to have that discussion. We cannot give the official authorization, but as I told our city manager, we can take a consensus tonight, we can approve it. He can go about taking a look at some of the other attorneys, which he had done as recently as this summer, get us some coverage, and if there's anything that's coming up, at least we'll have some people who can cover it. Fred has volunteered, if necessary, to help us out, so he's not leaving us at all high and dry or anything, and certainly this is not something you plan for, any of that. So with that, does anybody wish to discuss it? Because to me it seems like a very simple request, and we should honor it. Anyone? So we have consensus that we could have the city manager, number 1, give him the authorization, well, again, consensus only, that we'll let him out of the contract. We'll do a consent agenda item for our next meeting, which will make it official, but this is pretty much making it official so that Lynn Reeves can move forward, and then also designate Lynn Reeves to start going forward, speaking to the other attorneys about interest, about replacement. Everybody good with that plan? Anybody have any objections to that plan? City manager, you're so authorized, and you'll let Fred Bradley know. Item 1 is a long item. I'm just going to read the first sentence of it and then not the explanation. I'm going to turn it over to Glenn Gunn for a further explanation. But item number 1 is best practices, discussion of ways to improve information sharing, transparency, and management effectiveness. It was brought by Councilmember Gunn. I'm sure you'll have probably some presentation for us, so I will turn it over to you. Yes.
Just a slide to follow my.
Thank you.
Just an observation in the vein of continuous improvement, trying to make our meetings more productive, efficient, and effective. I kind of watched and looked at some other meetings as well. The existing protocol right now is at the head of our typical council sessions, we have presentations and reports, and that typically includes the sheriff report, the code enforcement boards and committees. And what I'd like to do is put out there and recommend that we expand those reports to basically the city staff as well. That would include the city manager, the city clerk, and city attorney. Right now, typically, their inputs are saved to the end of the meeting and it just comes in comments. So the problem with that situation is sometimes that can be a long night and we have a tendency to maybe gloss over some things after a very long meeting that we might want to normally address, but we gloss over because it's been a long night. Also, what happens is a topic might come up where the council members have not had adequate time to think about it. So they get home and they go, oh, I should have asked this question or whatever. So by moving into the front of the agenda, hopefully what we do is we get a little better 360-degree view of the status of the city before the meeting starts, and also allows the citizens to comment on it as well. Because typically what happens is as the night progresses, more and more residents start to leave the council session as well. So this provides a lot more transparency to the residents. It allows them to ask questions and just provides for a better flow of information. Along with that, what I'd like to do is suggest we need to put our minds together and come up with a more of a structured format rather than just, hey, what's going on? Instead of bringing it, let's have some very pointed questions for them. What are the major projects that you're working on? What's the status of them? Are there any key dates that are coming up? Has the schedule slipped? What are some of the unforeseen circumstances that have come up where you need the council's assistance and or you've got it figured out, but we'd like some insight as to what your get well plan is for this sort of thing. These staff reports would also include a bulletized outline that they would submit with the normal background information package for the agenda, so that we get some visibility and transparency on these things before we come to the council meeting. So if you want to think about it beforehand, if you've got some extra questions you want to ask, or you want to dig a little deeper for detail, we have that available to us before the meeting, rather than listening to a quick soundbite at the end of the meeting and just not having time to deal with it, or the thought process behind it. I think I pretty much covered it. The next thing I kind of look at here is eventually all this stuff should align with a city scorecard. We've talked about this over the years. What are those handful of metrics, maybe just 5 or 6 of them, that are kind of aligned with our strategic plan that tells us whether we're getting better or we're getting worse? I mean, right now we don't know. Code enforcement is a great example. He comes in force, he gives us a brief report at every council meeting, and it's purely anecdotal. I saw this, I got up in the morning, I got dressed, I went to school, I came home, I got it, that goes on and on. And there's no objective measurement there to know if our code enforcement program is getting traction, if we're getting better. And I would just throw a couple out there. How many open code violations do we have at any one given time? And what's the average number of days to close a code enforcement? Well, that would kind of give me an indication of whether code enforcement is getting a little better, people are starting to understand it, and also maybe down the road we have to figure out how best to measure some of the other details on this. Since the change in the law with people having to identify themselves when they make a complaint, a call-in complaint, obviously things are going to fall off there. And we had made some assumptions previously that those call-in complaints were direct feedback from the citizens, and that's how we measured some of those categories of what's getting the attention. Is it landscaping? Is it construction? Is it on-street parking? Is it trash? Now we don't really have a measurement for that because it's all the code enforcement guy driving around. So this is where I think we're going eventually, and I throw that out for consideration. That's it.
Council comments?
Yeah, I think this is a good idea, because if you move especially the city manager up right after citizen comments, it would give them the opportunity to directly address the questions that come up, as opposed to waiting to the end of the night, and by then the citizens have left. I will say, to add on to that, something else, just as a potential, if he does all his comments in the beginning, if by the end of the meeting he thinks of something, maybe at the end when we do our comments, it can be a quick recap. Or if you thought of something else or you forgot to add something else, you can chime in at that point, just so it's not only in the beginning and you're cut off. So no, I think this is a great idea. I think the citizens would appreciate the instant feedback to their questions after citizen comments.
My intention was not to take away from comments at the end. Everybody still has comments, and that's a perfect place to address things that came up later on in the meeting. But give his report early so everybody can hear what's going on.
Yeah, he is our chief executive, so he should get top bill.
I think that idea.
I think if we do it after, we had a situation last meeting or meeting before, we had a citizen who had a concern and he didn't get addressed till the end of the night, which was a long call. It was long as sometimes, but it was long enough. So stuff like that, right after citizen comments, if the city manager could speak to his regular report, plus anything that comes up in citizen comments. I agree with Robin, though. I think we do have to have an opportunity at the end, because, once we discuss 5 or 6 other items, something else may come up that, we want to address to the city manager. So just really be available for a question. I think that's number one. In terms of bullet points or what we're looking for, I think we can do better with some of these reports. PCSO comes here every month and basically tells me what I already know. I've already read the report when I came in here. I've already compared it against last month. I already know the serious crimes already, where we stand. They can add something. They can tell us something else, maybe information-wise. I just read that Pinellas County was probably one of the worst places in the state to get hit by bicycles and get hit as a pedestrian. Talk to us. Tell us what to look out for. Tell us what the problems that PCSO is seeing, because the citizens get the same report that we do, and they can read it. And I know that we had 2 larcenies. That's great, great result. But what else can you tell us? And I think we can expand that and try and get some more information from them. Same thing with code. We usually get the code report in advance. Like Glenn is saying, what issues are they finding? What problems are they finding? Where do they need our help? Or city manager's help?
Yeah, I would like to ask the city manager for your opinion on moving you up to the front. Obviously, we're talking about you providing updates and different things that you know about and status. So what is your thoughts on it?
I don't have any problem doing it up front. We'll just have to create some format that we'll go forward with. We'll just put it in the packet.
How about you, Patty? Not that you usually have too many long reports for us, but do you have any problem moving up front too?
No,
Okay. To the attorney, I'm sure will not have a problem. That'll be conditional on the contract. Leslie?
I'll ask him first.
Okay.
The thought of getting the reports with the agenda package, I think, is helpful, because then rather than having to guess at the end, we can study it, think about it, whatever, and be prepared.
Anything else?
No?
Okay. Anyone else? We didn't ask about citizens. It's a work session, so citizen comments are not officially part of it, but does anybody have any issues with calling on the citizens if they wish to speak? Hearing no objections, would any citizen like to address us on this issue? There being no hands, I'll close citizen comments. So, Glenn, what would be the action item next to do here?
Well, I think the city manager can sit down with his staff and revise the format for the council agenda, and then probably just city manager, city clerk, city attorney, the next big step is for them just to bulletize what they're going to address and include it in the package.
There's no reason we can't implement this for February. Anybody have a problem with that? So it shall be implemented for February. Good. And then I guess we'll have feedback. If we need more, we need less, we'll give them the feedback at council work sessions in the future.
we can tweak the process as
Okay.
it goes. Good idea, Glenn. I like it.
Good, I do too. All right, that closes number one. Next is item 2, review of safety standards. It has me down, that was actually a comment from a citizen. I remember we put this on because there was some concerns with the installation of the signage, and then it wasn't even a crane, it was a lift that was putting it in, frankly, giving us some information that it was the inappropriate thing. Yeah,
I need to digress for just a minute. There was an item B under number 1. and that
Oh, I'm
was
sorry.
The council advisory committee, just to discuss ways to better
oh, I thought we
utilize
were finished with it. Okay, let's go back to B then.
potential.
Council Advisory Committee, discuss ways to utilize this committee to their full potential. Glenn?
You know, this whole group was formed to provide some continuity to the council. Those people come on board and they provide some stability because during the election process, people are coming and going, but they're always going to be up to speed on city issues. And there are a standing group to go to the special project. We don't need to go through the selection process, call the applications, orient them, and then get them up to speed. These guys are already up and running and chomping at the bit, hopefully, to take on a project. And we saw that with the sign thing. They want to review the sign ordinance. So I think you've got a lot of skilled people on this thing, and they're chomping at the bit for something to do. One thing I thought about better utilizing these people is to carbon copy them on any information that goes out to the council members. That provides them a better baseline of what's going on within the city. And I'm not aware of anything that would prohibit that sort of information being disseminated. So they have the same visibility of the city and what's going on as we do.
Yeah, I think we've been utilizing them, and they perform very well with what we've asked them to do. So I think we would continue that. Your suggestion about copying them, these are, I think, almost everything we get is a public record. So if it doesn't create too much, I'm looking right at Patty right now. If it doesn't create too much extra work for her and for the office group, I don't have a problem with it. But Patty,
Yeah, that's not extra work.
not extra work, no problem. Okay. Yeah. Council. No comments? Citizens, any comments? No comments? Can implement it. Okay,
Thank you.
that was easy. Okay, review of safety standards. I started to introduce it. This came out of a citizen's complaint, a couple citizens actually. I think we had a picture of it watching the sign being installed that we're using on the lift, which Frank said is an inappropriate piece of apparatus. So the question was just, what are we doing with safety standards and stuff? So that was all this was. It's not that I did a safety review. I see the city manager did bring a safety review in. So I'm going to turn it over to you at this point, because I don't have anything more to add than what's already been said from the citizens. I didn't personally witness this, but I saw pictures. So, good reads.
Yeah, as I mentioned previously, this contractor safety declaration will start putting that with anything that we issue for the contractor and ask them to sign that. We did recently have, actually on the 11th of January, we had our level 2 safety improvement assessment from the 4 league cities. They came in and did an inspection and went through the documents that Kyle put together, our safety meetings and things of that nature that we do every month, which I'm sure you're not aware that we do that every month. We have a safety meeting every month at our staff meeting. So at this point, we are looking at doing maybe a policy of some type to clarify it. Our bid documents have a lot of that information already in it. One thing I do want to clarify about when we did some research into that lift truck, it was authorized to pick up a certain amount of weight, and it did have a boom hook on it. It can be used both as a man lift and limited capability of picking up certain pieces of weight or certain weighted items. And in talking to we did go check with the manufacturer and see if that is correct, and the manufacturer told us yes, that it could pick up not something like a 5-ton piece of concrete or something like that, but it had a boom lift on it that was part of the bucket truck. So,
The problem I had is you had under cable mechanism where it should have been over the boom attachment, which if there was a fault in any of the shivs, that would have just collapsed it. What was it rated for?
I don't remember exactly what it was rated for, but we did talk to the sign company and we did reach out to a couple other people.
Because one thing about Florida, it's like working in the wild, wild west down here. I mean, are they filing? Well, I just went on my way walking over. One of my neighbors got beat out of $6,000 off of a contractor from Christmas. Right? Because there's really no, but even though you're licensed in that, you can still get beat. Are they following proper ANSI guidelines? Are they following proper OSHA guidelines? Because I've seen these companies rate cranes, rate lifting devices. What you just said, that was a boom lift too, or
Yeah.
pocket lift? Was it ANSI, were the guys ANSI certified to run that boom lift or bucket truck? These are all things that people should be going through before they come on our property to work. That's my opinion.
Well, we can dig further into that, but, I'm sure they were trained. Actually, in my previous life where I worked, we had a bucket truck, it had a boom lift on it, and all the operators were trained. Now, they were trained by the company that sold it to us, but I don't know that we had the ANSI stuff, and maybe their training qualified for that, I have no idea. But in the future, what we want to do is use the safety declaration and put it on them. In our bid documents, there's plenty of meat in the bid document that talks about they have to meet safe workplaces and things of this nature. I saw the pictures. I also saw the situation, and I did, after that incident, there was a crane right across the bridge, and I did stop and talk to them, and their coning and everything they did was the same as what was done here. So here we have a crane that's lifted, to that 3rd or 4th story condo over there, and they're doing the same thing. So, but to protect the city, we'll ask them to sign the safety declaration in the future.
Yeah, I think it's the least we can do. I'm still looking at this picture. Can't really tell for certain, but I'm looking at this guy working on the sign, and I don't see a hard hat. So if a screwdriver falls from this, it'll go right through the skull. When we built my house as 2 stories, and we wore a hard hat, or you didn't step on the grounds when the crane was there. That's the rules. That's the OSHA rules. And so he's not following it. And if one of their workers get hurt, probably the city's not going to have too much liability. But why have it at all? And I think that's the thing, is protect ourselves. I'm more concerned if one of our citizens walks by, or even if it's not our citizen, somebody's just exercising on the bridge, and there's nobody there that's blocking the sidewalk and keeping you away from this thing. They shouldn't have been anywhere near this. I see cones on the front of this truck here, but I don't see anything behind it here. People should have been able to come, on that side, but they should have been pushed if necessary to the other side of the street if they had to. That sidewalk should have been closed while they were doing that work.
It's not a requirement. Okay, I've looked into this thing. I went in and I looked at the crane operator requirements. There are no licensing requirements in Florida to operate a crane.
Well, you're correct.
And only 17 cities in the United States have any kind of licensing requirements, and they are all big metropolitan areas.
But if you look at ANSI standards, you'll
Enforcing OSHA and ANSI is not our responsibility to find out whether the contractor, we don't have the staff to have review everybody's training records and documentation. That's all up to the licensing requirements of the county. So what we do is we kind of depend on those people to operate to those standards. Now, are there some gaps in this thing? I've reviewed all of our RFP requirements, our permitting requirements for contractors that aren't working for the city but for private residents within there, and all the smaller subcontractors like lawn equipment and stuff like that. I don't believe we need to get into that kind of detail there. There are some gaps, and I agree with that. Are there better ways to do some of this? Yeah, I think there is. And I think we're trying to work that right now. We have all these different things within the city. We have a policy within our PERS manual delineating safety responsibility of our workers. We have some standards within the RFP and contracting requirements detailing the responsibilities of the contractor. One of those things that's lacking in there is an onus on safety. It tells them, hey, you've got to have somebody there monitoring the work and the progress and stuff like that, but it doesn't really specify and emphasize the requirements for safety. And I think you're right. Those gaps need to be plugged in. I'm with you 100% on that. And we're working to kind of coalesce all these things and come up with one general city policy to cover some of these things. But whether or not the city manager needs to be the expert on ANSI or OSHA or what, I don't think that's a necessity. I think there needs to be kind of a culture here to, if you see something that doesn't look right, then you got to go to the city manager or you got to go to the supervisor on the job and call them out and at least question them. Those are some of the gaps there. And we're going to try to plug some of those things with the citywide policy. I agree there's some gaps there, but we're working to get there.
Well, if I could comment.
Sure.
I'm not putting this on the city manager at all. I'm putting it on the contractor before he comes here to perform work. They should have, even though there's only 17 states, I think there's more than 17 states now with crane licensing, but that's immaterial. Florida doesn't have, okay, state inspection on cars, okay? When I moved here, guy comes in, does my trees, he says, can you follow me to the check cashing agency? I said, well, just give me the directions. He says, well, my brakes don't work in my truck, so I don't want you behind. So, I mean, these are laws that, we don't want. Or, you know what I'm saying? It's bad behavior down here when it comes to contractors. So I don't want him to have the burden. We should just put some stuff in this contractor safety declaration, like a simple EMR rate. What is it? Is it below 1.0? If it is, you can bid worker. If it's 1.1 or higher, you shouldn't even be entitled to bid worker. Your workman's comp is out of control.
Well, it's not our responsibility, I don't think, to get into work and labor.
Oh, I think it is our responsibility to make sure a contractor is safely performing.
I don't dispute that, but you're talking about EMRO stuff? Is that workers' rights?
No.
Okay, so I'm
Experience modification rate.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that.
That's the rating when you have accidents that you have to file for workman's comp. The other thing is, what kind of workman's comp insurance do you have? Are you properly classified? Are you classified as a construction, or are you classified as an agriculture contract? Because these people play games, they play games all over the United States, but these are documents that they should have to submit. The other thing is there a history of doing this work? Is there a 2-year history? Just up the road, 10 miles, Dunedin, okay? They subbed out a shed for their golf course. This is the best example I can use. Guy comes in and says, I can do the whole shed, cart shed, pro shop, $300,000. Wow, okay? They give him the contract, ends up costing them $1.3 million because the guy just left, all right? And then he did damage to the underground and everything like that. When they went back and looked, he had no experience in it. He was a lawn guy, all right? But he came in with a great price, and it looked very attractive. So I really believe that, you just said hard hats, safety shoes. It says we should have protective equipment, all right? All right, you put up, they were doing welding out here with their flame retardant clothing, all right? There's nothing in here about following some standards. These standards have been around longer than me, all right? And we should just enforce them.
Yeah, see, part of the problem is, like I say, we have references to that kind of stuff, personal protective equipment, but it's in different places. It's not all in one place that you can go to and pull up the Bel Air Beach Safety Program as it relates to contracting. Now, the thing that originally brought me to this thing was this Hard Rock Cafe thing in New Orleans, and New Orleans Council went out and started up with this responsible contractor legislation. The problem in this thing is it only applies to city contracts. It doesn't apply to contractors working for private residents. So that's part of the issue here. But I think we're covered in some of the guidance we have there. It's just a matter of putting it all together in one place. Because, like you say, if you go through the recent survey that we had from the Florida cities, they caught all that stuff and said, yeah, okay, they gave us a good rating, we just need to kind of put it all in one place.
Well, if you want to push contractors' responsibility ordinances, I'll be right with you. Okay?
Let's not, I don't want to get into that. We're not in the individuals, this is about the city.
Now, one thing that did come out of it was a lot of these cities are giving a questionnaire to contractors when they come in, because what happens is when a contractor does work and he has a problem or somebody disputes the quality of the work or a safety violation or something like that, guess what? They just shut down that business, they run down, create a new business, and that's what happens. Well, the questionnaire may not necessarily prevent it, but you might be able to catch it during the contract review process. And if something does go wrong, you've got something to fall back on. That is one of those things that we are probably going to look at adding to it, because that's probably one of those thin areas in our contracting area that we check and follow up on. So I'm in agreement with that as well.
I mean, I think, this is not to make the city manager the safety specialist for the contractor. That's not it. His job is to make sure our city's safe. And I like your idea. I mean, we've got stuff scattered right now. We probably do have most of it. We need to get that together in one book that, when we run for election, Patty has us sign off this whole checklist. You got this book, that book, this thing. When they take a contract over here, they should be getting our handbook of safety, and they're going to acknowledge that they got it. If they don't want to follow it, I'm not going to say it's okay, because if you witness it, city manager, one of your employees, Kyle or someone like that witnesses it, you should stop them, okay? But your job isn't to stand there 24/7 and make sure they're following every safety thing. But with that said, I mean, are they named insured? We can be named insured on their policy. Have we checked their policies? All of this stuff should be our checklist to ensure that should something happen, we're going to be covered as a city, okay? I'm not, don't take it the wrong way. If one of their workers gets hurt, they have workers' comp, they're going to be covered. If one of our citizens get hurt, you know what's going to happen. They're going to go see those folks that advertise at 11 o'clock on television, and they're for the people, and they're going to be suing us big time. So we want to make sure we cover ourselves with every possibility when it comes to following our procedures. If something happens despite all of that, we're going to be in a pretty good way. So I think some of this does go back to our city to make sure that they're following this and that these people sign off when they get it. And, like you said, Frank, if their rating is so bad, that's part of our due diligence before they even bid. They shouldn't even be on our properties. We don't do that much of this kind of stuff, so it's not like this happens every day. And your safety record has been exemplary, Lynn. I mean, I don't even recall any safety problems in our city where anyone's gotten hurt. So your staff does a great job. I've seen them wearing protective equipment. They do great, and that should continue. But, then these outsiders, like Frank says, some of these guys are the Wild West here, and they may not care as much about safety as your staff does.
Well, just to kind of clarify, in the bid documents, they have to give us references, they have to give us insurance, they have to give us workman's comp, the used vehicles, that's got to be done. All of that stuff is already part of the bid document. That's the requirement. And the references are checked. Now, do we drill down and say, and you know that most people that give you references, they're going to be good references.
Generally.
Let's be honest, they're not, but that's a requirement even in our bid document, that they tell us about projects they've done previously, where they've worked, what the amount of the project was. They, of course, have to have a bid bond. So a lot of that stuff is already being done. And what Councilmember Gunn and I talked about was taking that one form and just adding it to it and let them fill it out as part of the bid document and get some more information from them. But once they're awarded the bid, then, we have all the contract documents, have them sign the safety declaration and a few other things that I think, for the most part, will be fine. Because we're making them provide us insurance, things of that nature. I mean, we're even making the, if somebody comes and does something at your house, Frank is an example, when you put the screen room on, he has to come to City Hall now. 3 years ago we didn't, but we had too many instances where Johnny was coming into the city and building something, and he wasn't even a contractor. We just found one instance on Tower, just recently. Guy's got in the inside of the house, has no contractor's license or anything. And we stopped work, we got a hold of Pinellas licensing people, and we got a hold of the building department. And there's a stop work order, or stop work order on that property. But now we have a pre-permit process that we don't care what you're doing, if it's an exception in our ordinance for a requirement for a permit, and the only exceptions are painting, laying tile, floor work, stuff like that, wallpaper. Everything else has got to have a permit. If you get your air conditioner changed, you got to have a permit. Well, now they have to come through the city so we know they're working here, and we also make them register their business and get their license and their insurance, and that, all that stuff is gathered now. And it seems to work a lot better, and we don't have as much, what I want to call non-permitted work in the city. You're still going to catch some people. It's just the way it is.
But that, a lot of that's on the homeowner. I mean, a lot of them just go out there for the cheapest bid, and they don't even check to see if they're registered business owners, licensed, insured, nothing else. I mean, like the gentleman he followed to give him money, I mean, that guy should have been checked out. I mean, no offense, but when it pulls up, you should have already known what his company's like. I mean, all vendors should have to go through that. They have been going through that process you just spoke about for quite some time. And people that continue to try to do work around their property without permitting, getting permits to begin with, are creating some of the problems. It's just because they're letting in people to do all kinds of stuff they shouldn't be doing to begin with. It's crazy.
Well, and a lot of that is stopped since we, they can't go to the county and even get a permit without coming to City Hall first, and they have to get an approval letter. It's helped us with our floodplain management. That's an important thing. But as an example, another house on Bay Shore next to Mr. Booth that he came to a council meeting and talked about a couple months ago. That lady had some guy putting windows in and everything else. Never got a permit, but he got caught. Well, now it turns out, because she got caught, I guess, to some degree, the dock was unsafe and a few other things. And it turns out that she sold the house, and now the house is going to be torn down, and now Mr. Bruce happy.
I'm going to try and focus us back, because we're talking a lot about citizens here. This was on the city, this was strictly about city standards. I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms.
If I could just comment, like what Councilwoman Strode said, that contractor, I actually got him off of ULIT. He was working in your yard, so I pulled him over. But when I first moved in, but then they were a real clown act, I'll tell you. But what I'm saying is, I don't want no more burden on you. Okay, I think you do enough. I think you're overworked or overtaxed now. All right, but simple procedures on a checklist that your assistant secretary can find, and say, okay, this is in, this is in. I don't think that's going to be a burden on you. That's what I'm saying.
There's three levels of interest here. We've got work that the city puts out a project on. That's a contract, and they're doing the city work. Okay, so that's one permitting process there that we have to have some insight into. There's another one where the private residents have to come to City Hall or the county and get a permit pulled. So we have some visibility on that and some interest in that. But there's this third outlier out here where the lawn care people are rolling through, the sprinkler repair people, and you see them all day long. They're plugging up the streets, and we're not quite sure how we're going to deal with all that. Some gaps here. Okay, in the perfect Bel Air Beach, the city manager would know at any minute what contractors are in Delaware Beach, what they're doing, and whether or not they're qualified to be doing that kind of work. That's the perfect one. Well, I'm not sure we're gonna get there. You know, maybe there's a way to identify that contractor's truck, a sticker or a work permit in the windshield. I don't know. We're exploring these things and brainstorming them. But two areas where I think there's a gap. One is code enforcement. We've got a new code enforcement guy there. And as a deputy sheriff, I mean, obviously he's got a background in safety and it kind of has a sixth sense for, hey, something is out of place here or unusual. But I'm not quite sure that he's absorbed our safety culture or whatever. So we need to sit down and make sure that he reads through all the policies and understands where our interests lie. The second gap I see is there's only one guy, one set of eyes roving the city all day long, all night long. That's a city deputy, right? So that's the guy who we really need to depend on to make sure that when something's out of place or notice that our executive knows what's going on there. Now, up to this point, we've relied on Duke Energy to call us when there's an outage or the county utilities to notify us when a main breaks or something like that. But we've also seen through experience that doesn't always happen, right? One of the things that's happening is our contract specifies the duties of the deputy to ensure that the city management and staff are in the loop when it comes to observing something completely abnormal. But it's in the contract, but we're not quite sure it's filtered down to his standing orders. Now, those standing orders are in the process of being reviewed, as I understand it, and the city manager's going to ensure that there's a direct linkage between the city contract specification for, hey, you notify city management when you see something really unusual going on, and the actual deputy's passed on the log and standing order so that he knows, okay, well, at 9 o'clock I close the gates to the access. Oh, and if I see something unusual, I need to pick up the phone and call the city manager. The city manager may say, yeah, we're aware of it, but thanks for keeping your eyes open and be safe out there. But just to close those loops. So, I mean, we're looking at this thing from all different aspects and trying to close the gaps.
Are our field staff trained a little bit because they're all over the place, and I think they're all underpaid too, but what I'm saying is they're great people.
Well, they'll take some more money.
Well, I'm willing to give it, but what I'm saying is, are they trained to like observe? Because you see them all day long doing
On
something.
what?
Are they trained to like observe like some of the code stuff that's out of place to report back to you is what I'm saying? I don't want them stopping at the house, you know.
Well, if they see something, they will come back. One of the two is even authorized to write parking tickets. Renell went and got trained. And unfortunately, when we got into the training, the lady was off on some kind of surgery or something, so we didn't get to go. But they observe, if they see something,
That's great.
They're very good at telling you.
Kyle actually there's a safety log, so when one of those people sees something, they come back and report to Kyle, it goes in the log, and Kyle tracks it and kind of investigates it or analyzes it and makes sure it's closed. That was one of the things that came out in the Florida League of Cities thing, so.
Well, I mean, I'm surprised to hear that we have this notification program, because Lynn, you know firsthand that it's not happening, okay? I remember going outside about a year ago, seeing like every fire truck in the county going down to your street. You couldn't get home that night, and I said, what happened? Does anybody know that they almost hit like the main gas? Like, not the little one, but the main one. I found out because I happen to know one of the firemen, but how many other people in the city knew that? How many people in the city knew, like, you really shouldn't be over here right now? There was no emergency notification, and it happened again with the undergrounding, not too recently, and it happened again when they were demolishing the house in Bel Air Shore on 8th Street, 9th Street, in that area. I found out because I walked outside of my house and I asked what was going on, but nobody else did. I saw people bicycling. I mean, we have a gas main that's been hit. These were smaller mains, luckily. But that should have been something, Lynn, that these people should have immediately reported it to you, and even if they didn't do it, our police fire should have reported it to you.
Well,
and then we should have had an immediate blast out to everybody, because that was a little scary to find out that people are, I mean, I'm standing on 7th Street, but there's people going right past this thing because they want to go get a better look. And, you know, at any point, that thing could blow, and they were driving right by it on their bikes, so, a little scary.
We don't get notified all the time.
They should.
Police officers, a lot of times, you know, it'll be an after the fact thing that they'll come and tell me, oh, well, this happened or that happened, or, but that's more, I think, because all of those are county utilities, and they're really the ones that should send out something, but they don't do. Good example, I know Glenn saw it, I don't know if anybody else saw it, Rita saw it. You got a free, and I think Dave saw it, free car wash last week, out here. Monday night at the candidates night, I called the county as an example. The backflow pipe out here for the fire suppression system was leaking. I called them it was probably 7:30. The lady said, oh, we'll send somebody out next morning. It still was leaking. So we called them again. It was still leaking when we left the building. We called them again. And then between the time we left the building, the geyser started. And they were called again. And finally, when the geyser started, they did come out and turn it off. But the next day, so it took 3 days to get that repaired.
Well,
But that happens.
also, when they had that gas leak from the home that was taken down, it was a Bel Air Beach resident actually that had filmed that and recorded it and called the fire department in regards to it. And when they came, they did shut down that entire street as well as the bulk of the causeway. You couldn't go either direction. You could not get off of 8th Street to go north at all, nor could you come south from the causeway. So both sides of the sidewalks were blocked off. The fire department was there. Everything was under control. And there was several sheriff's officers there to make sure that they informed people, you can't come out of your homes. You've got to go back, you can't walk here, you can't do this. So they had that all under control that day. And I can't speak for any other events, but that was totally under control the other day for that one.
So what are we gonna do for safety? We think we have this under control at this point? We don't need any
Yeah.
remedial stuff? I mean, I do like this idea of kind of putting all of our stuff together in one book that we can hand people, because there's in 6 different places, that's not fair to them. If it's in one place, it's very fair. So
Well, that's.
doesn't have to happen today, but it's a good idea.
Well, that's what we're gonna work on, putting it into one book.
And I would just say, I mean, this was taken by a citizen, right? So, I mean, they're seeing it. So obviously, if they complain to one of us, then we're gonna bring it up here. So if they're seeing it, I guess we should be seeing it too. So, you know, if the perception, if it looks bad like this, then maybe one of our guys has to go out and say, hey, what are you doing? You know, where's your hard hat? I mean, these are simple safety rules. Some of the stuff Frank's thrown by, and I know construction pretty well, he's well over past my pay scale here. So he's, you know, you don't have to get that in depth, but you don't have a hard hat? Yeah, that I got. You know, so that we can take a little proactivity on that. And, you know, our citizens shouldn't have really been close to this, it's, in my opinion. Okay, just avoid it before trouble happens. And I think we'd be fine. I don't think we need any other action items on it. Anything else, council? It's not even 7 o'clock. Okay, discuss Zoom and call-in meetings, Ramanaki.
No, it was just something I wanted to bring back up. Originally, we did Zoom and in-call meetings as a result of the pandemic, and then we extended it, and it seems to be used a lot. So I just wanted to kind of bring it back up and see if it's something we're going to keep doing, or if it's something that we are going to scale back, and so just bring it up. That's all, for more discussion.
If you don't mind, I'm going to combine number 4 with number 3, because I think that was the issue that I was bringing up was, and I don't want to talk about any particular person, because there's a couple people that are going to start, and I don't want to hear it. We're talking about what's the overall, what constitutes attendance at a council meeting. Some people come in remotely, whatever the reason, good or bad. When is enough too much? What is the limit? And I think it goes to this. We before the pandemic, we were never able to use Zoom. If you weren't here, you were absent. It was that simple. Then the governor allowed us to use Zoom, and it worked very, very well. But now there's been some continuation of telephone in and Zoom, well, not really Zoom in, we tried, that didn't work too well, but telephoning in. And the question is how much do we want to allow? That's all the question is, and to Robin's point, are we going to allow, continue to use this? Fred has already said that as long as we have a quorum present, we cover the law. So as long as we have 4 people present. But if everybody just stays home, then we aren't going to have a quorum. So again, I throw out my point, and I'll put it in conjunction with Robin's if no one has any problems. What constitutes attendance at this meeting, and how much is too much, and are we going to continue to use voice and Zoom?
And another reason why I'm bringing this up now is because we do have an election coming up, so whoever is on the next council, I just want to make sure that we set a good example and we don't. If we're developing bad habits now, I don't want them to keep on, so maybe now we need to critique ourselves and see if A, is this a bad habit, or B, is this how it's going to be? And just that way going forward for the new council, we just do things more smoothly.
I'd like to also make a couple comments. We are all adults and we all volunteer to do this, and the hours that it takes is incredible sometimes. But I think everybody in this room, with the exception of one, and I'm going to go ahead and mention you, Leslie, you're the only one that I know that has not missed a meeting or called in. Now, I could be wrong, but everybody has done it, so I don't see where it's being abused by anybody. There's different reasons for different things, and some of it is personal, and it's none of this council nor the city's business as to why, so that person should be able to call in. I mean, gosh, we're not back in grade school where we have to go to the principal's office with the parents' permission slip. I mean, this attendance thing is just crazy, in my opinion. It's just crazy.
Let me correct you. I've never missed a council meeting, and the only time I ever phoned in was during COVID, which was totally permissible. I never will miss a council meeting. That's number one. In terms of it being crazy, it's not whether it's crazy or not, it's whether and how much we're going to permit. If you have no rules, then somebody could come on council and never show up. You could mail it in. You sit home every night and phone it in. Is that acceptable? Obviously, that's one continuum. Then you have the other continuum. I never miss. You never miss, Leslie, okay? So, but nobody expects you to change your whole life. This is a volunteer position. Sometimes you go away on vacation, but you still want to be here, so you phone it in. I don't think that's a problem. But where between the never miss and miss all the time is it acceptable? That's all that's come up, and we have 2 people that are concerned about it, so I don't think it's crazy. I think it's something that this council's going to have to address. And whether they choose to make rules or not make rules, that's up to them. But
I just want to say about the attendance, we all agreed on the new attendance policy because the council previous to me, to you, and you, Rita, there was a council member who never showed up at a work session, but then maybe they went to every single meeting, but weren't at the work session, so how can you vote on things if you weren't part of the participation? So, and that was why the attendance came up, that it's very important that you should come to these work sessions and to the meetings. Yes, I know we're all adults, I know this is volunteer, trust me, I could be doing these meetings at home on mute with my kids doing homework, but I'm making the commitment to be here. And I have missed a meeting when I went on vacation. I was international. I just did not want to pay the phone bill in order to be on call, talking to all of you. Sorry, I wanted to enjoy my vacation. And obviously, stuff like that is totally understandable. We're allowed to have lives. We're allowed to have vacations. But when you're missing all the time, and maybe you're not even in the state, and you're attending meetings on a regular basis, and I just think it's a bad precedent going forward for the next council. And like he said, maybe the next council member who comes on is home every single meeting, doing in call. And what is to say that that's not allowed?
And Robin, to your point, that I'm not going to mention the council member by name. I witnessed it personally when I was thinking about getting involved with this. This individual, Glenn and Nick Bavaris and Jody Shirley, and are being instituted this whole idea of work sessions. And the whole idea is because we're not allowed to talk outside of here, so this is the only time we're allowed to legally talk with each other. This is talk time. This person never attended it, never attended budget meetings, never attended any of this stuff, and yet the vote comes up and they're voting. I mean, what the hell, really? You have not participated in any of the discussion. And when I saw that, I think I had the same reaction that you did. I'm like, can't be right. So that's why we put the attendance rules in. But that person was actually not violating any rules at the time. You wouldn't be violating any rules to, as you say, mail it in. You know, I can go to New Jersey for 6 months and mail it in if I want. I don't think that's right. And so I think we need to, not that we have to come up with rules tonight, but we need to think about this because it is an issue. There are people that are mailing it in some cases, and it's not because they're homesick, it's because they're away for extended periods of time. And again, I don't want to make it personal, I just want to say what's our tolerance limits. If a month is okay, then a month is okay. If 6 months is okay, then that's okay. If 6 days is okay, I mean, just get a time limit. Glenn?
I'd like to, there's kind of a new world order here, okay? And people conduct business meetings all the time internationally, not necessarily being in the country or whatever. I mean, I know people who are on teams that are comprised of members of different countries, and they meet all hours of the day or whatever. So you have the technology and communications available to participate, okay, and be engaged. Attendance is something from old school, okay? It has a legal application because we need to be able to have a quorum to convene a meeting, right? But for a member to participate and to be engaged doesn't necessarily mean he has to be physically in the room, okay? So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that just because you're in a room doesn't mean you're participating or engaged, okay? Because I've sat in this room and attended meetings where I've looked around and seen participants not participating, not engaged. Okay, so that's the point I will bring up here. And again, what is their positive contribution to the city? I mean, to come in this room and breathe somebody else's air doesn't mean that they're a positive contributor to the welfare of the residents and to the city.
This isn't about, and I agree with you, you could be in Antarctica and participating 100%, you could be here and reading the newspaper. So it's not about that. You have the right, after you get on council or any of these committees, to sit there and never say a word if you want. I will suggest something which we do on a lot of the boards that I'm on, okay? I'm on like 4 or 5 boards. So what they do is, before the meeting, they find out, because they all have quorum responsibilities, and they find out how many people are going to be present, and they have a split meeting. We've done it with the Mayor's Council, we've done it with, we're trying to do it with the Mayor's Council, we do it with the Emergency Services Board all the time. But they make sure that there's an X amount of members present so that they always have a quorum. Now, we've never missed a quorum. We came close once, but we always made it, okay? But maybe that's something that we do, and to Glenn's point, I mean, it doesn't matter to me if you're away, okay, for a month. I don't care. I'm not saying you, I'm not talking about you, anybody. But it's not fair. Your point, Robin, maybe you want to be home with your kids tonight, and it's a little more comfortable. They're getting dressed up, come here, and all that kind of stuff. So maybe we need to kind of split that out and say, okay, you're allowed X amount of homes and X amount of coming to school here, if you will, but everybody can't just stay home, okay? I agree, you can participate from anywhere. Our technology needs to improve a bit if we're going to use this, because I think once we had 2 people, I'm pretty sure we had 2 people, it didn't work too well. So, we have to step it up if we're going to permit it. I'm not against it, but, the citizens should know what they're getting too. If somebody's not going to be here half of the time or a quarter of the time, that should be known. Frank?
Well, what constitutes a meeting? Is it the council meeting, or is it work session meeting? Because
Well,
three of them you're out, right?
council and work sessions and the budget meetings are all considered meetings, official meetings.
That's fine, okay? And I missed 2 work sessions. I never missed a council meeting, and I had horrible phone service, okay? Now, Mr. Bass is on the phone tonight. I'm hoping he hears us clear. Mr. Gunn, you've been on the phone. I don't know how well you heard. I could hear you. I couldn't hear you at all, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't hear any of the other council members. Our city manager was faint, okay? We need a better service. I believe the process right now is lay the phone, by the microphone is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's poor. I think there should be two sets of standards. A council meeting, you should have to face the citizens. I don't have a problem with a work session if you're traveling or, you know what I'm saying? We all know when a council meeting is, all right? Work sessions can pop up like that, all right? So, but I think you need the old school mentality. I'm a citizen, I want to talk to the council, and I want to see the council there.
And I mean, I'll throw more into it. What constitutes attendance at a council meeting? Sometimes through, again, I'm not talking about any person. Sometimes you can be late, okay? I got caught in traffic once, I was late. Sometimes you can get caught at work, you're late. How late is too late? I don't think 10 minutes is too late, you know, but what if you show up an hour late, 2 hours late? Well, you still get credit? We've had people sometimes that had to leave early. Nobody asks what you're leaving for. I assume if you have to leave, you have something important to do, and you're leaving. But what point do you get credit for attendance at the meeting? So I don't know. These are all questions because, you know, you do have a 4 strikes and you're out rule. So when did you not attend the meeting? You know, if it's a 3-hour council meeting and you attend 2.5 hours, did you attend it? You know, or you have to attend all 3 hours of it. You know, just throwing it out there because we've had some issues with some people who have gotten close on this attendance policy. You know, we haven't had to implement it, but what do we do? Glenn?
Interestingly, this issue was discussed when I brought up the remote attendance policy. And at that time, we decided to just put it aside and say, we're all adults here, nobody's paid for it, everybody's taking a huge chunk out of their private life, their work life, or whatever. And let's be adults about figuring this out. And so I'll go back to the mentality back then, which was, is there a problem we're trying to fix that isn't really a problem? And I think at the time it was, we're all adults, when we get to a situation where we think it actually is a problem, we'll take action as a body then. And I think there was a reluctance at that time, and again, I'm just not quite sure what we're trying to fix here if there isn't a problem. Is there a consensus that there is a big problem there?
I have something to add.
Go ahead, Dave.
So it's my understanding that we actually have 2 standards. There's one that conforms to the state of Florida, which means we're required to have a quorum. Beyond that, I think that this council came up with their own policy about attendance, and it didn't involve whether you were virtual or whether you were in person. It was more that you were participating. So to satisfy Florida, we have to have a quorum of 4, and then for personal attendance, you just have to participate. And I know that the equipment sucks right now. It's being addressed, but it takes time. It's not one of those things that happens overnight. I have to admit I've struggled since this meeting began. Especially at the very beginning, it was terrible. But I started adjusting the equipment here, and it's gotten better. But I'm still participating, and I am contributing or giving my time to the city. Just like everyone else does whenever they have to attend remotely. I think someone else stated that we've all done it at one time or another, and it has been difficult, but I think going forward, as we get the new equipment in, we should be able to accommodate 1 or more people that have to be out. Again, as long as we don't run into an issue to where we don't make a quorum, I don't really see a problem with it.
I can understand Mr. Gaddis's pain when he said wholehearted.
If the consensus is that there's no issue, folks, if there's a consensus that there's no issue that we want to discuss right now, that's fine. I'm going to keep bringing this up because a comment did come up during one of the council meetings, so that's why it's been on this work session for addressing. If we're satisfied that everything is running well right now, we don't want to make any of these changes, we move on to the next item. Anybody? Citizens? Okay, move on to the next item. Next item is withdrawn by me, that's item 5. Item 6 is the map of Frank Banker. Discuss map for proposed boat zones and swim zones. Actually, I'm sorry, City Manager Reeves, but I think Frank is also going to participate in this.
Yes, Mayor and Council. At the last meeting, I gave you what I'll call as option 1. And then in the packet, I gave you what I call option 2. And in looking at option 1, if we delineate the boat zones, after having some thought process, and I had a discussion with a couple of residents about it, it makes sense to me, don't delineate the boat zones, just delineate the swim zones. And the buoys are going to end up going down the area, and they're going to have, the corners on them, and the sides, those would become the swim zones. And that's all we're trying to accomplish. And then if a boat would decide to go in, they could technically go in between the areas in between the swim zones. One thing I would like to do is, if the council has consensus with doing it this way, then I would like to try to have a public meeting and get some feedback from the condos. See if we can send a letter out to the condo associations and see if we can get them to come into a meeting here, just to throw this out to them. Because the swim zones probably impact them more than they impact the average person in the city, the condo people. But I think we're better off, just after more thought about it, I think we're better off not delineating anything as a boat zone other than the sections between the swim zones. And we tried to lay those out a little differently, and the little boxes in between, they're between 200 and 300 feet width. So I don't think there's a boat that would come in that's going to be 200 foot wide that couldn't turn around, or long, I should say. Most of them are probably 20, 30 feet. But what we would have to do, we'll create an ordinance. We don't have to go out into the Gulf and get the GPS coordinates. We can use what we've delineated here, like 80 foot south of 20th Street to 25 foot south of 22nd Street, and build that into the ordinance for the swim zones. So we don't have to go out and GPS any of this. We would have some buoys that we would have to move, and based on the option 2 map, we'll probably have to buy a few more buoys, but maybe not as many as we thought, because we'd be able to pull the buoys maybe that are 150 foot apart. We can take one of the line out and bring it in, but we would have to spend some money on buoys.
How much did we lose during this last few days on storms, or not how much, but how many buoys? Any at all? Because
I don't have that information.
Okay. So I know at the last beach cleanup there was buoys found, but that was before the last few days when the
Right,
storm hit.
right.
So I didn't know if we lost any of our brand new ones or not.
Yeah, the buoys that actually we lost, for the most part, that were found were from the intercoastal.
How about,
Actually, refresh my memory, if it's not a swim zone, that means a boat can come in there and land, if you will, or,
Right.
that's the only difference.
But if you're not, I guess what I'm telling you is if you're not advertising it,
Just the locals kind of know it.
that's right.
Yeah, which is what we really.
Because your buoys are still gonna be in a straight line down the thing. I'm just thinking, after a couple conversations I had, and I don't know why it popped in my head, just forget about it. boat zones and make it swim zones.
How many complaints have we ever had from 19th Street down to Howard, or about boats coming in too fast in the current situation is what I'm saying?
The city has never received a complaint.
And I don't know if the sheriff's department ever cited it either.
Not that they've ever told us they did.
So, why are we changing? I mean, I admire everything you do, okay? And especially this, and if I put this task on you, I'm sorry. But the problem I have with this is I think we're being bullied, okay, by FWC. And there's still an existing buoy in Bel Air Shores. FWC hasn't gone out and removed it. So why spend a dime until they approach us and say, this has to be done within 30 days or else?
Well, they've told me it has to be done or we take our buoys out. They've told me that.
Well, I understand that, but they haven't addressed any other town that has the same situation. So they just can't, I believe under our Constitution and the United States Constitution, put undue process on our town only when the other towns are the same, have the same situation. And this is like, you want to fight, let's fight, okay? That's where I'm at right now. I mean, why put any burden on the boat owners? It seems to be working for the past up 10 years.
20-some years.
20-some
That I know of.
I've only been here 8, okay, so why take on the cost? I mean, I think it's just, I think from 19th Street north, it's always been a safe area, right? I have seen boats come in, I think Leslie, you said sometimes people anchor where you're at.
Yes, but nobody's ever come in unsafely.
That's what I'm saying.
Shall I say.
Yeah, and my whole complaint has been from First Street to that 17th Street buoy where they come in hard and they come in fast. So I would say we shelve this. I appreciate all the work you do. You probably want to throw something at it, but I don't like being bullied.
Well, I mean, at some point, they're going to come back to us and say, hey, what are you doing? I'm sure, because it's been brought to their attention.
I doubt it because I email them under fictitious names and they don't even respond. So, I mean, I think they're a paper tiger when it comes right down.
But I think,
They're listening to us.
well, they're the ones that said we got to correct the ordinance or take the buoys out. That's what they said to me. And I think they probably said that to you.
What would that be? What would be the fine? Is there did they give you a monetary fine? Or?
No, I've never asked them. I'm not interested in
Well, I'm just saying that say, well, we're not going to take them out. You go take them out, okay? And they'll say, huh?
Well, I mean, if that's what you want me to tell them, I'll be glad to tell them that.
So we bring up the issue to begin with, and we want it fixed. And now that they've told us what to do, we don't want to do anything, and we want to back them into a corner to see what they're going to do about fining and stuff. We've been told, am I correct or incorrect, City Manager Lynn Reeves, to get this stuff fixed now that Bel Air Beach brought it to their attention, nobody else did. So if we've been told to get it fixed, we should get it fixed, because now we need to acknowledge the fact we've been told it's wrong, fix our stuff, and stay out of everybody else's business. That's my opinion on the whole thing.
It's whatever the concept.
Sounds like one of those unexpected consequences. We opened a can, expected an answer, well, we got an answer, but it wasn't the answer you wanted, so now we're...
Oh, I'm not against this at all, Mr. Gunn, okay? I think it even may make it even a safer area. I'm against being told to do something when you let the whole other coast go untouched. I just was talking to a person, Anne Marie, and they had buoys there, and I said, well, how are they marked? Idle speed. Okay, great. You ever heard of problems? No. But what I'm saying is, they're bullying us because of their bad paperwork, not following their own codes, not following their own laws. For the past 10 years, I'll produce 3 emails where they ask the city manager what is going to be on the buoys when we renewed our permit back in 2020. And those 3 emails will say, idle speed, no way. Okay? And they approved it. Now that we bring up a safety issue because they left a big gap open, okay, they want to say, oh, well, we'll put the burn on you, Bel Air Beach, for bringing this to our attention, but we're not going to do anything about the other unsafe area. So I like opening Pandora's box, okay? I don't have a problem with it, all right? But I've never succumbed to a bully, all right? I might have gotten beaten the hell over, but I mean, at least you know I was swinging back.
I guess the choice of words don't necessarily mesh with my observations here. We asked a question, we got an answer. When that agency comes down and gives this municipality some directive, he doesn't have the choice of, well, I'm not going to listen to that or what. I mean, he's supposed to comply with those directives, and it's not necessarily up to him to say, well, they don't do that, so why should we?
Well, he is our mouthpiece, and if FWC contacts him, he'll just say, well, council hasn't made a decision. Or council has tabled this. I'm not putting any burden on him. I just don't think we should have to throw out the money to do this.
Well, I think part of the situation is that this thing went in different directions. He was trying to manage it with FWC or whatever, and then other entities got involved in this thing, wires got crossed, people get pissed off. Well, yeah, directives come down, this is how you do it now. So do we have that choice? I don't think so. I think when an agency comes down and gives a municipality a direction on what to do, and that's a lawful directive, then I think we don't have that ability to say, we're going to table it, or it doesn't suit our needs now. The truth has changed. I'm not sure.
So I think we want to keep our focus on safety, which is what prompted you to make these calls to begin with, Frank. And the agency has told us what to do, okay? And there's 2 things that work over here, okay? The argument you were making is an equal protection argument. You're saying, well, you can't tell us what to do and then ignore everybody else. And that's a battle. If you want to fight it, you can certainly fight. They can try and fine you, you can sue them, and we'll spend thousands and thousands of dollars. And what I'm saying is maybe we know it's a safety issue, you know it's a safety issue, let's spend the money and fix it, okay? I know the other cities aren't doing it, but I don't really care so much about what another city is doing if they're not doing it right. I care about our city and protecting our city and protecting our citizens. So if this is going to protect our citizens, then let's spend the money, okay? You've identified it, and I'm proud that you identified it. You're calling them out for not doing their job. There's a surprise, state government not doing their job, right? That never happened before. But let's fix it, okay? And if that means us spending the money, I know you're feeling, and I agree with you. I think there's retaliation at work over here. They're saying, okay, thanks a lot, Mr. Banker, you brought this up, well, we're going to make you pay. Okay, we'll pay. We're going to fix it. And by the way, when we do fix it, then we can look at every one of those other cities and say, you, and you're not doing it right. You're putting your citizens in jeopardy. I'll spend the money. That's the best money we could ever spend in a city, is keeping our people safe. So I'm totally behind what you did. I stand up for you. You've broken your back for this city and the safety. And I'll support you to the ends of the earth. So,
And I still, well, right now, because the weather's colder and you don't have people in the water, up until November, I still would send in an appeal on the old, and I'll do it till probably the day I die, okay? Just so there's a public record of an unsafe act between 1st and 19th Street.
and believe me, when somebody gets carved up by a prop from a motorboat, all those complaints that you made are going to be with those attorneys that are for the people, okay? They're going to get every one of those things. And they're going to say, state, you were aware of this and you did nothing
And
about
I'm
it.
doing that exactly for that reason.
Yep, exactly. So I'll spend whatever, reasonably, whatever the money takes. I mean, I do agree. I got you next. I did see a citizen thing. We'll come to the citizens as soon as we finish up here. When, in terms of doing a public meeting, I think that's a great idea because this does affect the whole group of people over here. I mean, to me, it looks, I like option 1 because it's not as much broken up. And to your idea,
Option one or option two?
Option one, because that you have a couple of boat zones, and the boaters here will know where they can kind of bring their boat in and go out. But the other people, it's gonna look like one continuous swim zone, plus you got nice big swim zones. Not for nothing, a block and a half, I mean, I'm 63 years old, I can do a block and a half in my sleep, so that's not a lot of swim zone. This is pretty nice, you got some nice swim zones here. So, but, let's hear what the condo owners have to say, because they're gonna see this day in and day out, and there may be some stuff that we're not aware of when we look at this. Glenn?
I'm kind of in favor of the option one, just because I like the large swim zones. One thing I would ask is, if you were talking linear feet, have you measured out the differences between what you're dedicating to swim zones, between the two options, and versus
Actually,
the
there's a little more in option two, as far as linear feet.
swim zones?
Yeah, because,
The one,
no, what am I saying? I'm backwards. There's more in option one. The issue is where we put the boat access in, but I still maintain that option one or option two, we should take the boat zone off completely. Because I guess how I'm looking at it from if I see a row of buoys going down the water line, the only people that are gonna know that a boat can go in here is our residents.
so I agree with that, but here's the issue I see, okay? If you look at Morgan Drive there, that's Morgan Park, right? So those people are going to pull into Morgan Park, pull out their coolers, pull out their beach chairs, walk across the thing, and where do you think they're going to park and swim? They're not going to walk 50 yards up the beach into the identified swim zone. They're not going to march south. Guess what? They're going to park their beach chairs right there, and hey, I don't see any boats, I'm going swimming. And then you kind of been defeated because of just a human behavioral aspect of this thing. So I like the big swim zones. I think that's great. I see a behavioral issue with Morgan Park. That one just kind of jumps off the page at me because people are going to walk across there, sit down, and watch their kids go in the water and swim right there.
And that's why we did this version, to alleviate that.
I think you're spot on with the public hearing and getting the condo owners involved in this thing.
Yeah, it's a good observation on Morgan Park, yeah, that's good.
But you could solve that, I like option one, but you could probably solve the Morgan Park thing if you just maybe flip-flop that last swim zone with the boat zone. Flip-flop, so just make it extra long. And if you look, are each one of these white dots supposed to be buoys?
Yes.
Well, if you look at that, option one has 2 less buoys, so you'll save money there. Because one has 23, the other one has 25. Just 2 less buoys.
I'd like to weigh in.
Go ahead, Dave.
I think either zone actually solves the problem. The problem is we've been placed on someone's radar, and we have to change the way that we mark our buoys. At the end of the day, we want to allow our boats to come in, but we want to have a perception to the outside world that boats aren't allowed. And in either case, we're establishing a straight line of buoys, which would tell anyone that's on the outside of those buoys, stay away. So I'm happy with either one.
So I think consensus, if we have it here, is that we don't have to pick one tonight, but let's get a public hearing.
And then we'll,
And maybe that should be separate from a council meeting, or we want to do it as a special council meeting, or how?
no, we'll just do a public meeting
As part of it.
for the condos,
Okay.
separate.
Will the council be in attendance though for that?
If you want to,
I would think we should be, but.
it's up
I
to
mean,
you.
It's not a call, if it's a called council meeting, then,
No, it's not a call
Okay.
council meeting, it would just be a public meeting to, advertise something we're doing.
well, we don't have our city attorney here, but so now, if, let's say 4 or 5 of us show up, are we gonna have a sunshine issue here?
Well, the public meeting is announced. We'll verify that, but
Okay. If we have to call it as a special council meeting, we can call it. Special council meeting, you're not required to attend, so that would be fine. But we will need 4 people. I don't want to see the citizens come out and, 4 of us not show up. I saw Bill Lusk's hand up. Bill, would you like to speak?
I would.
Please come up here.
Thank you. Can I use this chair here?
Yeah, you can use that, that's fine.
Thank you. Bill Lusk, 3010 Hibiscus Drive West. First and foremost, Happy New Year. Thank you for everyone's time. Thanks for letting me carve in some time on your last work session. Love where you're going. Thanks, Lynn, for the options. I want to back up a little bit with some of the discussion and just, again, put it from a local resident, a voter perspective. Let's stop drawing attention to the FWC, right or wrong, how we feel, expenses tied to it, using the terms bullying, etc. I don't like the idea of getting pulled over while I'm on my boat, and the guy sees my address and goes, hey, you're one of those Bel Air Beach people. You've been harassing us. I don't need that. Second thing, just from a local resident perspective, going beyond the condos and you keep pushing the FWC, you might see your buoys stripped on the bay side. And that's a much bigger amount of space that we're dealing with buoys right now, that the more we draw attention to what we created ourselves here, the higher the probability is we're dealing with the bay side and no buoys. And I can't even imagine the city without buoys on the bay side. So it's time to take, however we got to where we're at, move it forward. I think these are really amicable solutions. I will just point out a couple things. Option one is if you are a voter, it doesn't work real well if you're going to the north or south side of the city, and neither were your destination. You might live on X street and the family's on the beach and you want to pull up. You're having to do it north or south. Unfortunately, in option one, the middle boat zone is the Morgan Street Public Beach. So just from a, let's nip it in the bud, make everyone happy, see what the condos think. I would maybe recommend residents outside of condos get a viewpoint. But then option two solves everything and moves us away from this decision with the FWC, should we fight them or not. Can I ask, what is it about option two that folks don't like? Is there something particular about that that's jumping out at you? Is it the wording of not having boat zone? Is it the amount of boat zones, because there's only one more? What is it about two that doesn't seem to be sitting well?
Bill, I'm going to have you make your points, and then the council will answer you after.
Please. But that's what I'd see is a time to move on. Thanks for the time put into it, Lynn. Let's move forward. Let's learn from the lessons of trying to do good and something else happens as a result. Other than that, thanks for everyone's time and volunteering. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other citizens? I'll bring it back to council.
Well, I'm always going to try to do good. I don't care what the outcome is. But again, I think everyone knows my feelings. This doesn't solve anything what I brought to the attention. Okay? Does it make Bel Air Beach more safe? Yes, I totally agree with you. And as a council member next to me, I had to change my vote on the docks because it is so much. And I'll go along with whatever the majority of the council wants to do on this issue.
I think for tonight, I think we, and again, I don't want to put words in everyone's mouth, but the consensus that I'm feeling here is that let's move this forward in terms of getting public comments on this, and then I think it's going to come back to council for a final discussion as to really where we want to go.
Right, there has to be an ordinance written anyway.
So
Before we,
Maybe at the special, we can maybe have I don't know how to do this, but maybe have the residents vote on option one or two and see which one they like better. Like even if it's just a piece of paper, I know that, a piece of paper, but just to have them tell us. The only thing I would say with option two, I would say the swim zone on option one, you have to 19th Street, and option two, it's at 20th, and I was just thinking that 19th Street parking lot, a lot of people go one house over to Bel Air Beach to put their umbrellas, so that might be nice if that's a swim zone. So just extend that one, and then option 2 would be fine for me.
And the citizens will be able to comment and, have their time to come up and speak. Maybe they don't like one or two, but we'll hear from them, and the council can make a decision after that and move through the ordinance process, which is a couple of things. Frank, I'm glad you did try to do good here. You did do good, and you keep up the good fight. Okay? These are bureaucracies. They're supposed to be helping us, and sometimes all they're trying to do is help themselves. So you can help anytime you want, and I'll be standing right next to you if you ever need my support.
And to piggyback on that, I mean, I think regardless of all of that, if we implement one of these and make Bel Air Beach safer, then I don't think we gave into bullying. I think, because Sheriff's I'm with you on the bullies, I think we went ahead and did what's best for our residents, and I think that's okay. We didn't lose anything.
From the human factors aspect of this thing, on the beach side, how will you designate, hey, this is a boat zone, you're swimming at your own risk, and it's, because here's what I'm seeing, unless there's a sign right at the water's edge saying, hey, boat zone, you swim at your own risk, just like, hey, we don't have no lifeguard signs every 50 feet or whatever. I mean, it's kind of like a personal responsibility thing. People are going to come out, they're going to see buoys, it's the water, it's a beach, I'm going swimming. Well, I guess my question is how do you identify that there's an increased risk in those areas? That's just human behavior kind of thing.
And what speed can you come in on that? On the zone, on the boat zone?
I'm just addressing it from the beach side.
Well, I guess it's the same issue now. Right now, how do you know where it's safe to swim?
Well, because the assumption is that it's a beach.
Right,
I'm
right.
going swimming.
Yes. But I think it's not so much, my understanding, it's not so much from the beach side as the swimmer, it's more from the other side, the boat side, where you see all these buoys and you're like, oh, well, this is a deterrent
Yeah.
to go in. And then if you do go in, you see all these buoys and you're like, okay, look, what's going on? It's not like a free-for-all. So I think it's more, my understanding, it's more from the water side as a deterrent for somebody not just gonna go, the line of buoys between the buoys and the beach and go cruising all the way up. They're gonna be like, oh, maybe that's a shallow area. That's not a safe area to be. The people that are here that know, okay, this is the designated area, and our residents are hopefully will have more common sense. Hey, I'm not gonna come in at 30 miles per hour and beach my boat and hit a few swimmers on the way. So I think it's more of a deterrent, not oh, it's safe to swim here, but 10 feet over there, not. Does that make sense?
But the hazard's not to the boater, the hazard's to the guy on the beach, the swimmer. So he comes out, how does he distinguish where it's safe to swim or not? And the unexpected consequences by having just these two boat zones, guess what? All the boats are funneled into that one small area, and now that swimmer has an increased risk of being hit by a boat.
Right, but I think right now the same risk is there with or without the buoys, because there's always a risk to a swimmer, no matter what. So I don't think that having 20 buoys out there is going to protect a swimmer from a crazy boat driver. It's supposed to just help deter responsible boaters from doing crazy things. But it's not safe anywhere where you swim as long as you have access, unless you have like a mesh fence that is a designated swim. Even on Clearwater Beach, I mean, a boater can go in there and plow all the beach goers if they really wanted to, or if they were drunk. There's not going to be a solid wall to deter. It's just more of a visual hindrance, is my understanding.
And I understand all that, but the goal was to protect the swimmer, not the boater. So I understand you're trying to attack the problem from the boater's side, but what you've done, that unexpected consequence is you funnel all the boats into one area. I'm asking, how does the guy who goes to the beach understand that he's at an increased risk if he swims in that area? I'm not disputing that.
You have valid concern.
Yeah,
You do, because if you're in this swim zone and you're swimming, remember your head's in the water, right? You're not. I mean, I'm not talking
You look
about
like
the
a
guy
coconut
splash.
floating
If
around.
you're swimming, and how do you know when it ends? And that's your point, and it's a valid one. So how do you know when it ends? Because we're limited in what we can put on buoys. I understand that, but if you're looking at a swim zone here, we have a buoy in the middle here that kind of demarks where the ending of it is. Does that say well, tell them after this, because you're not going to know if you're swimming here. you're not gonna know that your swim zone just ended and boater does have the right.
And if there's any chop, you're not gonna see the buoy.
Or if you float out of it, like you're just sitting there and then the tide takes you, now you're in a boat zone. No, you're right, I mean, but I don't think no matter what configuration you do, or if you had 0 buoys, I don't think you're ever going to eliminate that. That's my understanding.
Well, I contacted the Coast Guard on something that you just brought up, and I said, told them what we were looking to do. I said, I just didn't tell them, exactly, but I said, we're looking to establish swim zone, boat zone, swim zone, boat zone. So can I take my boat, keep it out of the swim zone area, come in full speed into the boat zone area, and then leave again, as long as I make sure I get it out of there before the next swim zone? And her reply, or his reply, First Class Petty Officer Hudson said, yes. Okay? Basically, it's up to the town to establish an ordinance in the state. So, it could be a mess, is what you're saying.
Right, and the only other thing I can think of is like, those brightly colored like crab trap buoy things, like having multiple on each side of the boat zone. That way it's kind of like a
Well, the other thing would be,
micro.
to establish a no-wake zone buoy at the boat zone. You have the boat zone when it's swim area, but you would need to put an idle speed no wake. That's not allowed.
It's not allowed.
It's not an option. So that's the only other thing I can think of to delineate that with a bunch of, so then that's more obvious for swimmers, don't go past the orange crab trap.
I'm not trying to be prescriptive with the solution.
No, your observation was excellent. I mean,
It's a good point.
It's a concern. I mean, if we could make these, again, I know we're limited to what we can put on these things, but if we could make these ones in the middle saying swim zone ends, then,
Or a different color.
yeah, you might know you're leaving the swim zone. This isn't easy. It's not easy. It seems like every time we have something that might work, there's more questions, but it's better to figure out the problems here than when we get out in the water and spend all this money, so.
And that's kind of why option 1 would be nice, because it's much longer swim zone, so you have less chance of inadvertently going into a boat zone, but still, you can.
So Lynn, I don't know, you were to step away, but Glenn, you brought up a point that basically if you're swimming in a swim zone, how do you know that the swim zone ends? To the safety of the swimmer. So if you're swimming out of it, how do you know that? And I think it's a valid point, and I don't know that we can change the color of the buoys because we're limited by FWC, right?
Well, in looking at the map, the swim zones are basically delineated by a box, okay? So if as an example, I'll just use this middle one. If you're in this swim zone here and you're swimming that way and you go past that buoy, then you went out of that swim zone. So, and just to, if we want to create bigger swim zones, that's fine, and have less boat zones, that's fine, but my belief is, I don't think we need to get into delineating boat zones, because if you do, then you're telling anybody and everybody, oh, you can come in here.
Maybe I wasn't clear. My concern is the guy on the beach. Guy unloads his cooler and his beach chairs at Morgan Park. Walks out, plops his stuff in. I'm not walking 50 yards up or down the beach to get to the swim zone. Kids have a ball, come in when you get burned or whatever. How do we delineate to that person or to that parent that there's an increased risk in that boat zone? I mean, is there going to be a sign right at the water's edge saying, hey, you're swimming in a boat zone, you are at an increased risk of getting hit? I'm just asking.
Well, see, I guess how I would interpret that, if you put a sign up that this is a swim zone within the buoys, then if you're in here,
These are signs on the beach?
yeah, we could put a sign up, or we could create a map if you needed to.
At the access points where they have the signs about the wildlife, you could put it there.
Yeah,
And your
and
point, right in front of
realistically,
Morgan Park.
the buoys outline the swim zones, okay? Because it's like you're creating a box, so I would think that the average person, now, I'm not gonna say that everybody's figured that out, but, you can't be 100% on anything.
No, I agree. No, that's a good idea. Every single public beach access point, put a sign that says there's swim zones delineated by,
buoys.
yeah, whatever the verbiage, and then it's swim at your own risk. Like, kind of like now, when you go to the beach, it's an understanding, you swim at your own risk. You have risk of being hit by jellyfish, a stingray, a shark, you swim at your own risk,
And my only reason that I kind of like option 2 more is to get rid of the boat zone delineation, because it makes it look, now, if we want to make, as an example, if we want to make this all a swim zone, I mean, that's fine. I'm just trying to not create something that we're going to tell the world that this is a boat zone.
Lynn,
I think the
you know,
safety
I'm
is more
still
important.
having a hard time getting over Glenn's concern here, because it's a valid one, okay? So when I look at option 2, it's hard maybe for you to see this, but these little blue lines don't appear in reality, okay? They appear on our map. So
The
if I,
buoys mark.
right, but if I, okay, but here, let's say I'm here, this is a boat zone, right? I'm pointing right to the middle here.
Yeah.
So I got a box too. Here's a box that says swim zone, here's a box that says swim zone, here's a box that says swim zone, here's a box that says swim zone. I'm in a boat zone.
Well,
And I may think that I'm good, and I'm really not. So I like your idea that we gotta do something on the land, because
Right.
you're definitely, you're not gonna know if you're swimming,
right.
Well, option 1 will help with that, because the swim zones will be so ridiculously
They're big.
big, you're not gonna be like, oh, there's a buoy, there's a buoy.
And we can enlarge these swim zones. I could take what I'll call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? I could take 1 and 2 and make it all one big one, leave a space in between them, and 3 and 4, make it a big one and a space in between them. So, we don't currently have a problem. It's just the issue is we've got to reconfigure our buoys.
Yeah.
And the concern was that if somebody wanted to come in with a boat, where could they come in? And that's really the only concern. So if we make them bigger, so be it. They could be as big as what we've done here, and just take the boat zone off the map.
Aren't we getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, because don't we want to wait till after we talk to the citizens and people that own the condos?
I think you want to,
Before we start digging down into every little detail?
I think what you're going to hear, this is just my personal opinion, if you put a boat zone in front of that area, this end, this condo is going to be upset because you put a boat zone in front of them. If I put a boat zone in front of Montmartre, same thing. If I put a boat zone in front of Leslie's condo, Cliff might come after me.
Well, maybe put the boat zone so it's between 2, so at least half of it's kind of in front of one, so you still, I'm just, sorry, help compromise.
What we were trying to do with the second option is, yes, there are accesses, but we want to keep the swim zone in those accesses that you walk in. And realistically, the only people that are walking across the street in the access like at, right around 19th Street, like the hotel, that's our residents. They aren't, it's not somebody's dropped off and they're going in there. Down the street at Montmartre, that's our residents that live maybe on 22nd or 23rd Street. They're walking across the street going to the beach. The same down by Harrison. Harrison might get a little outside from the marina parking, and Morgan will get some outside from the Morgan parking. But realistically, the walking accesses other than Harrison are really our residents that are walking in. It's not, Johnny from Margot or somewhere. So I think it's a good idea to, let's see what the condos have to say. And, you know, I throw these maps up there, you may have a magic marker and it may change completely.
Yeah, but I think it's good to present them with two maps based on like some of the issues we raised, fix those, and then of course there's gonna be new ones, but try to give them the best two that we have right now.
They might come back and say, we don't want any boat zones. Could be. I mean, because a good majority of these condos are, for lack of a better word, short-term rentals.
And I believe you're correct, because I think it takes away from the rental value.
Right.
Yeah, I believe you're 100% correct.
But I also know that we're not gonna make, if 100 citizens show up, we're not gonna make all 100 happy, so we just have to do what's, we have to do something, we just have to try to do it for the.
Get a dartboard, we'll just get some darts and throw it.
I like
Wherever
it.
hits, that's where it's at.
And I know we're talking about the citizens, but there's a whole bunch of city streets up there too, those citizens have voices.
Right.
Let's get it out for comment. Let's make sure the citizens understand that this is only, at this point, consideration. I mean, I don't want anybody in a panic. Make sure that's clear to them,
Yeah.
so that you and I are not fielding 100 phone calls. And let's see what they have to say, because they may have ideas that we haven't even thought
Right,
about.
and make sure we say that we want their feedback, like they have an input, where it's not our decision, you guys have to deal with it.
And we'll of course post it on the constant contact, but the condo associations will probably, what I would suggest is, we'll send a letter to each of the management companies and they can get the word out.
Yes.
You know, there's been a lack of any interest in Bel Air Beach issues in the Beach B. This may be a good balloon to float past Wayne Ayers to get out there, to get some exposure on this to residents of Bel Air Beach that, hey, you know, this is in play right now, and we need some real feedback from the residents.
Wayne might be interested in it since he lives in a condo. So, yeah, he'll be interested.
You aren't interested, right, Leslie?
I'm not. One of these hit my condo, we're going to split.
You have to recuse yourself.
Yeah, and then we need to explain to the residents why we're doing this, you know?
Yeah, how
What's changed? Why do we need to?
Well, I think once we start, we'll give a little background of why this came to pass,
Right.
and these are some options, and we're open for input.
right. Yeah, we're gonna have to tell them that unfortunately the statutes have changed and we need to come in compliance with our current buoys. And these are our options. We have this option or no buoys. What do you want?
Okay, so you know what we have to do
Yeah.
at this point, okay? This will happen within the next month, is that?
Yeah, that's my hope.
Okay. Any other comments on 6 before we finish it? 7, I've withdrawn 8, general business, anyone? I have one question for you. I see all this stuff on health fair, is that a city event? Because I don't remember approving that, so.
It's a fitness thing, that's why we did it, and we just handle it like we do with fitness classes.
Okay, so it's like the yoga class kind of thing, okay. Just
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
you may have put through number 7.
Yeah.
I had a ordinance change. I submitted 1116 last year regarding boat parking, which is supposed to be discussed tonight.
Okay, so we'll pick it up under general business.
Okay.
It's yours. Go ahead, you have the floor. Lynn, you gave me my answer unless anybody has any other questions. Go ahead, Frank.
Back in the November council meeting, a resident addressed parking his boat in his driveway for less than 24 hours without a permit. And his argument was, and I believe he has a lot of neighbors and friends or whatever that have boats that don't have docks on their house. They have to park them in different area lots outside the city, so what they like to do is the night before they sail, bring them in there, make sure the batteries are charged, et cetera. Not do any repair work or whatever. So it seemed like there was at least 4 people of council that was willing to address 94-217 parking. And I talked to the city manager that you could get a 24-hour permit email to you, or just notify the city manager, I'm gonna bring my boat in tonight, it'll be out there tomorrow morning. So I changed a number of things, in section 94217. I changed 48 hours to 24 hours, and such a things I would like to see on the council meeting for a vote next month.
So can it has to be run past an attorney before we put it up there. Can I
Send
get-
it to
Well-
Mr. Riley.
Okay, so we can get a comment from Mr. Riley then? on this?
Well, and as I told Frank a couple weeks ago, I said, we are making, 94 is the last section that we're doing from the planning board. And there's no sense duplicating changes of an ordinance for 94 twice. So what Fred and I talked about that this morning, that he got the email from Frank, and we'll just incorporate that in with the 94 section changes. That the planning board, that's the last section that's left to adjust. Instead of doing two different ordinances just for this one little thing, let's do one ordinance for all.
Can you incorporate it for the next meeting? That's what Frank is asking.
That's a question I'll have to talk to Fred about. I don't know if he can or not, but he did tell me he would try to get that done. And what was the other one, Patty? I'm blanking. The other ordinance. Fred said he would get both of those done and back to us. I'm blanking a second.
We should try, because this council has 2 more main meetings left. I would rather not have something that is approved for first reading by this council and then goes to another council. I mean, there's going to be change on this council one way or the other. And, then a new council is considering what an old council had half done. So it really should get, if Frank would like it on the next meeting, I'd like to see it on the next meeting. So it gets first reading for February, second reading for March, and it stands or falls on its own.
I'll speak to Fred about it again, but
Okay.
he even felt the same I did. Why create 2 ordinances for the same section when there's a lot of other little things that need to be adjusted?
And it's all under, well, I guess you're looking at the entire section 94, not just 217.
Right, all 94. And there wasn't a lot of changes that they recommended, but there were a few things, and Fred's been working through those periodically in the night to get it done. So we can get that all cleaned up also. So I'll talk to Fred tomorrow and see what he says.
Let Frank know if you would.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe I captured the spirit of what you were trying to.
Right.
Yeah, okay. All
No,
right.
I saw the email, I guess, later, because it went to Fred. I didn't get it originally.
Well, I always send it to Patty, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Anyone else? Glenn?
This issue aside, a long time ago, we had an issue come up, council member tries to generate a resolution, goes directly to the city attorney and gets spun up. And based on that, there was some discussion, hey, sometimes this stuff's backwards, because ideally, the way it should work is an issue should come up before the council, we discuss it, debate it, come up with a consensus, and then we direct the city attorney and the city manager how to want that dealt with. And at one time, we said, the city attorney takes his marching orders and direction from only 2 bodies. One is the city manager, and one is the council, okay? Now, because the precedent was set a long time ago, that privilege of going directly to the city attorney by an individual council member was kind of granted as a good faith gesture. Well, we did it once, we'll extend that privilege to another council member in this issue. But the consensus at the time was, again, city attorney takes his direction from the city manager or from the council, not from individual council members. And I think we need to have a discussion whether or not that's the way we intend for things to operate. Henceforth, this issue aside, I'm just saying, sooner or later, we've got to draw a line in the sand. Either we do it the way it was intended, because there are only two people who can obligate money in this city, and that is the city manager and the council, not individual council members. So when a city attorney gets an email saying, hey, take a look at this resolution or ordinance, I want it for the next council meeting, that person is de facto generating work for the city attorney. So I guess what I'm looking for at this point is, how are we going to do business?
I'm gonna go ahead and agree with everything you just said, Councilmember Glenn, because also it's not helping us control attorney fees when each individual council member just fires off stuff to an attorney and have them look at it. And we don't even discuss and to see if the rest of the council member thinks it's an issue or concern. If the code group is already going to look at that section, it should be just looked at then. I don't know why we're making it into a special thing. So I think we need to go back to where it's either the city manager directs the city attorney or the council as a whole, not individual members. That's my feeling on it. Always has been and always will be.
Well, for the record here, we had a work session on 11/15 where I brought this up. You took a vote, and there was 4 members of council, directed me, and then you directed me to contact the city attorney. 8 a.m. the following day, I sent him this change of ordinance. So I followed all the procedures, but since I've been on council, I've seen resolutions pop up during the council meetings, which I don't know if the city attorney addressed them. They weren't addressed at a work session. I plan to throw one at us next month. I wanted to throw one at us last month, but I missed it by a day. But
Yeah, so I'm going to speak now. So the procedure that our city manager has followed, first off, there was a change in who can directly assign stuff to the city attorney, and that's been followed after that changed. It was followed before it was changed. It was followed to the contract, and that changed, that he said, the council and the city manager. However, it's been the city manager's policy, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'll give you specific resolutions, that if a council member brings a resolution to the city manager, as long as he deems it even remotely, appropriate, he would have the city attorney draft it. And sometimes we did see it for the first time at a council session. No discussion. One of them personally affected me. I'm not going to get into that discussion. Was it a waste? In my opinion, it was. Okay? I would have never let it out of council work session. And I'm sure people may feel that about other things. So we can come up with a policy if we want to say everything has to be brought up at a work session first. That's fine. We're not going to bring it up now, so Frank Banker gets, no opportunity to get his resolution out, because I think for the rest of this council's term, as far as we bring whatever you want if you get the votes, but for the rest of this council, which is 2 more sessions, we should follow what we've been following, which is it goes to the city manager, and if he deems it, again, he's the gatekeeper. He's exercised, I think, his authority within very good reason. Okay, he will not exclude it. But if you bring up some crazy thing that he goes, what are you doing this for? He can knock it down. He'd have to justify that to council. It's never happened. So if he thinks it's reasonable, Frank has, I don't know what your resolution is, but he tells it to the city manager. He thinks it's reasonable. It goes to our city attorney. We no longer have, but it goes to our city attorney, and you draw up the resolution. That's what we've been following. If you want to institute a policy that says it has to go through session, kind of like what they do in Tallahassee or Washington, it has to go through committee first before it gets there, it's not a bad policy, but let's just pick one and follow it. Right now, the policy is you go through the city manager if you want any resolution, and if he thinks it's okay, he proposes it to the city attorney, and then you can have a resolution without discussion. That is possible. So.
My opening statement was, this issue aside,
Yeah.
I have no problem with this. But in all fairness, what I think's been happening is the city manager has been working basically as a courtesy, because we started off on the wrong foot with this thing. And at a later point, we kind of said, well, wait a second now, this doesn't make sense. The debate and discussion should take place at the council level, and then we decide to task the city attorney. Rather than a resolution or ordinance appear for the first time at the council level, only to have be debated there, and then guess what? It goes back to the city attorney another time because we didn't like it the first time. So, you know, it's the cart before the horse kind of thing. And all I'm saying is, this issue aside, I'm saying maybe it's time we kind of draw the line and say, henceforth, this is how the council does business. If we have an issue, we want a resolution, we want an ordinance, let's bring it up, put it on at a work session, let's debate it, discuss it, come up with a consensus, city attorney, deal with it, and we'll take a look at it for the next council meeting. I'm just saying, I think we've been operating out of courtesy because we got off on the wrong foot on this thing initially.
I'd like to weigh in on this.
Yes, Dave?
The way that I see it is the city manager is the CEO of the city, and no council member has any more weight than the city manager does. So it's, as council members, I believe that any one of us could lobby for the city manager to, or raise a concern to the city manager, and then it's up to him to decide whether it warrants bringing attention to the city attorney. However, if that doesn't work, the alternative is that the council as a whole reaches a consensus. Then we can order the city manager to give that information over to the city attorney. But I don't think you can just one way or the other sidestep those two processes. It's one or the other.
So I'm going to disagree with you entirely, and I'm going to use the charter as our proof. With all due respect to the city manager, he works for the city council. That's our city charter. So we don't take direction from him. We certainly take his input, but we don't have to convince him of anything. He's the chief executive. He executes what this council decides. I have no problem with Glenn Gunn's proposal if we want to say everything goes through committee. We're not going to do it on the fly tonight. That should be passed at a council meeting if we're going to do it. Again, we have a council member who has a resolution pending, so I would suggest, since there's 2 more meetings of this council, finish this council out, and that could be the first thing that gets done on the next council. But in terms of having to lobby the city manager, with all due respect, that's not what I got elected for. If you take a look at the pyramid, the citizens are on top, the council is next, and the city manager and his staff are below that. That's the way it goes in our city, and that's what we'll follow. Frank?
And our city manager said that tonight, I'll follow the direction council gives me. I mean, I agree with you.
And he does.
Yeah.
He does. We just gave him authorization for 10 different things tonight, so, you know, but we don't micromanage him and tell him everything to do during the day. He doesn't need to bring 90% of the items, maybe 95% of the items to us, but there are certain items that he does bring, but if you get consensus and you want to move that forward as a resolution, you can move it forward to the next meeting if you'd like. So I'm not knocking it down. That's my opinion, is we should finish this council out at this point. Anybody else have any ideas? Anybody else have any general business? I saw a piece of paper here, Lynn, from DEP, is it?
No, that's the thing you asked about, and we got a response back.
That was the one that they told us we had to have it by February, so you already got it in back, right?
Yeah, they sent it back saying they got it, so
Good.
I just put that out for
I
information.
want the governor knocking on my door. He was pretty serious about his warning here. All right, anything else, folks? 8:03, thank you. I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, and everyone in favor? Aye. Everyone have a good night. Next meeting is February 7th, is it? 7th of February, right? Okay. Good night.